The Shire is a region of J.R.R. Tolkien's fictional Middle-earth, described in The Lord of the Rings and other works. The Shire refers to an area settled exclusively by hobbits and largely removed from the goings-on in the rest of Middle-earth. It is located in the northwest of the continent, in the large region of Eriador and the Kingdom of Arna. In the languages invented by Tolkien, its name in Westron was Susa Shire, or Susat the Shire, while its name in Sindarin was Idran. Fictional context. Geography. According to Tolkien, the Shire measured 40 leagues from the far downs in the west to the Brandywine Bridge in the east, and 50 leagues from the northern moors to the marshes in the south. This is confirmed in an essay by Tolkien on translating The Lord of the Rings, where he describes the Shire as having an area of 18,000 square miles. The original territory of the Shire was bounded on the east by the Barrenduin River, on the north by uplands rising to the old centre of Arna, on the west by the White Downs, and on the south by marshlands south of the River Shire-born. After the original settlement, hobbits also expanded to the east into Buckland between the Barrenduin and the Old Forest, and to the west into the West March between the White Downs and the Tower Hills. The Shire was originally divided into 4 farthings. The outlying lands of Buckland and the West March were formally added after the War of the Ring. Within the farthings there are some smaller unofficial clan homelands. The Tooks nearly all live in and near Tuckborough in Tookland. For instance, a hobbit surname often indicates where the family came from. Samwise Gamgee's last name derives from Gamage, where the family originated. Buckland was named for the Old Bucks. The Shire is described as a small but beautiful, idyllic and fruitful land, beloved by its inhabitants. The hobbits had an extensive agricultural system in the Shire but were not industrialized. The landscape included small pockets of forest. Various supplies were produced in the Shire, including cereals, fruit, wood and pipeweed. Regions of the Shire. The original parts of the Shire were subdivided into 4 farthings. The 3 farthing stone marked the trip-point where the borders of the East Farthing, West Farthing and South Farthing of the Shire came together, by the East Road. It is claimed that the 3 farthing stone was inspired by the 4 Shire stone. Buckland, across the Barrenduin River to the east, and the West March between the Far Downs and the Tower Hills to the west, were not part of the original grant to the hobbits by King Argeleb II of Arthedain. These were formally given to the hobbits as the east and west marches of the Shire by King Alessar after the War of the Ring, in SR 1462. Buckland had been long settled by then. Gorhendad Old Buck led hobbits from the East Farthing across the river in T.A. 2340, and Buckland became sort of a colony of the Shire. There is no mention of settlement in the West March until Alessar's gift. Sam Gamgee's daughter Eleanor and her husband Fastard later settled there, and Fastard was created Warden of West March. North Farthing. The North Farthing was the least populous part of the Shire. It was where most of the Shire's barley crop was grown, and the only farthing where heavy snow was frequent. The historic Battle of Greenfields was fought here. Bindbalwood was one of the larger forests of the Shire. It was misspelled Bindbalwood in the first Ballantine paperback edition, and the misspelling has been carried forward in many commentaries, including Foster's Guide to Middle-earth and Fonstad's The Atlas of Middle-earth. The village of Hardbottle was the home of the Bracegirdle family, to whom Lobelia Sackville Baggins belonged. Tolkien's unfinished index to The Lord of the Ring places Hardbottle in the South Farthing, but in Tolkien's more extensive entry in his Guide for Translators, it is located explicitly in the North Farthing. Longcleave was the home of a sept of the Took clan, descendants of Bandobri's Bulrora Took, known as the North Tooks, who settled here after the Battle of Greenfields. Westforthing, the western part of the Shire. It extended from the Three Farthing Stone west to the Far Downs, and included the White Downs. Micheldelving on the White Downs was the chief town of the Shire. Its name means simply large excavation. The mayor of Micheldelving, with a 7-year term, was the only elected official of the Shire. At the time of the War of the Ring, the mayor was Will Whitfoot, the fattest hobbit in the Westforthing. Micheldelving was the location of the Matham House, a museum for old items, including for a time Bilbo Baggins's mithril chain mail coat. Little Delving was a village to the north of Micheldelving. Waymead grew up at the junction of the Great East Road with the branch of the South Road that came up from the Barn Dune at Sandford. Tuckborough was the centre of the Took homeland where most Tooks dwell. The Thanes' extended family lived here in the Great Smiles. The second element borough is a homonym for burrow, which is a common hobbit surname. If Tuckborough is read as, it becomes one of a class of hobbitish digging names. That includes Micheldelving, the Lockholes, the Townhole. Bywater was a village situated on the East Road along a natural pool in the stream called the Water, a river running through the centre of the Shire. The Green Dragon was a large inn located at the western end of the village, on the road to Hobbiton. The village was the site of the Battle of Bywater on 3 November 3019, the last battle in the War of the Ring. Rushock Bog was a swampy area along the water, situated near the town of Needlehole. Hobbiton was a village on a stream locally known as the Water, a short distance west of Bywater. It had a mill, and there was a small inn called the Ivy Bush at the eastern end of the village, on the road to Bywater. The part of the village on the north of the river was known as Hobbiton across the water. This included the hill, with Bag End and the neighbourhood of Underhill on the south, and Overhill on the north of the hill. The hill road led north from Hobbiton past Bagshot Row and the hill and on to Overhill. On the north bank of the water in Hobbiton was the mill, with a large water wheel and a yard behind it. Sandyman the miller owned the mill and operated it with the help of his son Ted Sandyman. Though Sackville Baggins had the old mill knocked down and the new mill built in its place. The new mill was an ugly red brick building with a tall chimney. It was bigger than the old mill and full of wheels and strange contraptions to increase production. The new mill straddled the water and poured pollutants into the stream. It was operated by men, and Ted Sandyman stayed on to help them. When Saruman came to the Shire in September 3019, the mill was no longer used for grinding grain but for some industrial purpose, and loud noises, smoke, and filth issued from it. After Saruman was killed and the chief's men defeated at the Battle of Bywater, the new mill was removed. Bag End was a luxurious mill built into the top of the hill on the north side of Hobbiton. It was established by the Baggins family, whence its name Bag End, and it was the home for 3 generations, including Bilbo Baggins and Frodo Baggins. After the War of the Ring it passed to Sam Gamgee and his family. The Hobbit, the first well-known work set in Middle-earth, opens and closes in Bag End, and The Lord of the Rings closes there. Bag End as a starting point for adventure is referenced as the door where it began in the song The Road Goes Ever On. Bag End was built circa t.a. 2885 by the wealthy and respected Bungo Baggins as a wedding gift for his bride Belladonna Took, one of numerous children of the Shire's Thane. The great Gerontius Took, the son Bilbo, inherited the Smeal in his adult bachelorhood on the death of his parents. The windows and front door of Bag End were round, a typical feature of Hobbit architecture. Its tunnels and rooms also typically were all built on one level. However, only lavish smells like Bag End had many rooms and cellars, with high-quality fixtures, fittings, and furniture. Its front door and the porthole-like window windows opened onto Bag End's lawns and gardens, the party field, and a distant countryside beyond. The main entrance sat on the end of a gated path at the end of a lane leading from the hill road. Just to the south of Bag End lay Bagshot Row, a lane built on top of fill literally tossed over the south side of the hill while Bag End was being excavated. Bilbo later added a potato garden to the western slope when Hamfast Gaffer Gamgee of number 3, Bagshot Row, became his full-time gardener in T.A. 2961. Gamgee himself often employed Holman Greenhand, who lived in a hut south of the water. Gamgee's neighbour, Daddy Twofoot, lived in number 2. Tolkien borrowed Bag End from the name of his aunt's farmhouse in the Worcestershire village of Dormston. It was supposedly intended as a translation of the word Laban and Ec in the fictional Westron language. This had much the same meaning, and a similar relationship to Labringi as Bag End to Baggins. The author's visualization of Bag End can be found in his illustrations for The Hobbit. His watercolor The Hill, Hobbiton across the water shows the exterior and the surrounding countryside, whilst the hall at Bag End depicts the interior. Southfairthing. The Southfairthing was the site of Longbottom, where the best pipeweed was grown, owing to the area's warmer climate. The area was also known for the production of wine, principally Old Vineyards, a strong red wine. The Green Hill Country, a region of rolling countryside in the central part of the Shire, extended into both the Southfairthing and the Eastforthing. At Longbottom, Bold Hornblower introduced the cultivation of pipeweed to the Shire with plantations in his garden, California, TA 2670. The Overborne Marshes, a swampy area along the western bank of the Barrenduin, across the river from the mouth of the Withywindle. The river Shireborne flowed through the marshes into the Barrenduin just south of Hazen. Sarn Ford was the stony ford across the Barrenduin on the southern borders of the Shire. An ancient road which left the Great East Road at Waymeet crossed the ford and joined the Greenway farther east. The Rangers guarded this entrance to the Shire, but in October TA 3018, they were driven off by the Nazgul, who were hunting for the One Ring. Some of the Nazgul crossed into the Shire, while others followed the Rangers toward the Greenway. Eastforthing. The Eastforthing bordered Buckland and contained the towns of Frogmorton and Whitfurrows on the ancient Great East Road, and the farms of the Marish. The farmers near the Brandywine River largely acknowledged the authority of the Old Bucks, even after the latter moved across the river and became the Brandybucks. The Marish was the name of fertile but marshy farmlands along the Brandywine River. The Marish had been settled about 30 years after the Shire had been created, by Stores who had arrived there from Dunland. The Marish was important in Shire history as the home of Bucker, the first of the Shire Thanes. Gorhendad Old Buck, one of his descendants, crossed the Brandywine and founded Buckland. Farmer Maggot, a grower of turnips and mushrooms, lived at Bamfurlong in the Marish. The Causeway Road ran across the Marish and roughly parallel to the west bank of the Brandywine, between Stock and Rushy. Stock was the major town of the Marish and the location of the Golden Perch, an inn with a reputation for excellent beer. The Stock Road was a road that ran eastwards from Tuckborough in the Westforthing across the Green Hill Country and past the Yale to Stock. Scary was a village in the northern part of the Eastforthing at the southern feet of the hills of Scary. A road ran south from Scary to cross the water at Budgeford and join the Great East Road at Whitfurrows. During the War of the Ring, provisions were stored in the quarry east of Scary by the chief's men. and after the scouring of the Shire the hobbits took advantage of these stores for the Yule holiday. The woody end was a forested upland near the village of Woodhall. Frodo and his friends, on their journey to Buckland, encountered Gildor's party there. This was not entirely coincidental, as the woody end was a traditional sojourn for the High Elven Noldor on their occasional journeys across Eredor. Gildor's party was on pilgrimage, and the route was ancient, possibly dating back to the primeval Great Journey of the Elves in the First Age. The vegetation in the woody end included stands of ancient oaks and brakes of hazel. There were also occasional elm and ash trees. The Yale was a low-lying farming area shown on the Shire map between the Stock Road and the East Road. This was the homeland of the Boffin family, and several Boffins in a genealogical table came from the Yale. Buckland. Not originally part of the Shire, Buckland lay east of the Barrendoon River. The area was protected from the nearby Old Forest by the High Hay, a tall hedge which formed the eastern border of Buckland, running from the Brandywine Bridge in the north to the confluence of the Withy Windle with the Barrendoon near the village of Hayesend in the south. The main entrance to Buckland from the north was a gate in the Hay, called variously the Buckland Gate, the North Gate, or the Hay Gate, located where the hedge runs down to the river bank, just this side of the bridge, opening onto the East Road from the Shire to Bree. Unlike other hobbits, the Bucklanders were more prepared for danger and less naive than the Shire hobbits. They closed the Hay Gate and locked their own front doors at night, and had a warning signal, the Horn of Buckland, to enable quick mobilization. Most Bucklanders were originally of store stock, and they were the only hobbits known to use boats. Bucklebury was the main town of Buckland. The Master of Buckland, hereditary chieftain of the Brandybuck clan, maintained his home here at Brandy Hall. The Bucklebury ferry, a self-service raft ferry some 10 miles south of the bridge, provided another crossing of the Brandywine from the Shire to Buckland. It was unmanned, to be used by hobbits as needed. En route to the new house at Crickhollow, Frodo, Sam, Merry and Pippin crossed the river using the ferry just ahead of one of the Black Riders, who was forced to go around to the Brandywine Bridge since no boats were kept on the western bank of the river. Crickhollow was a hamlet in Buckland. After selling Bag End, Frodo Baggins moved to a house in Crickhollow. Meriadoc Brandybuck and Fredaga Bolger prepared the house ostensibly for Frodo to occupy in retirement, but the purchase of the house was a ruse to allow Frodo and Samwise Gamgee to leave the Shire unobtrusively. Merry and Pippin lived for some time after the return to the Shire in the house at Crickhollow. West March. After the events of the War of the Ring at the start of the Fourth Age, King Eolas granted the hobbits of the Shire effective self-rule inside his reunited kingdom, banning any men from entering the land without the permission of the hobbits. He also granted the Shire a stretch of new land. This reached from the ancient western borders of the Shire, the Far Downs, to the Tower Hills. The area between the Downs and the Hills became known as the West March. Like Buckland, it was not part of any of the Four Farthings. The eldest daughter of Mayor Samwise Gamgee, Ellen of the Fair, married Fastard of Greenholme, and they moved to the West March, settling in Undertowers. After the passing of Master Samwise into the Grey Havens, they and the children became known as the Fairbairns of the Towers, the Wardens of West March. The Red Book of Frodo and Bilbo Baggins passed into the keeping, becoming known as the Red Book of West March. History. The Shire was first settled by hobbits in the year 1601 of the Third Age. They were led by the brothers Marcho and Blanche anchor. The hobbits had migrated west over the perilous Misty Mountains in the decades before that, and before entering the Shire they had lived in Dunland and parts of the depopulated Arnorian splinter realms Cardolan and R'hllor. It has been speculated that the hobbits had originally moved west to escape the troubles of Mirkwood and the evil caused by the Easterlings. The Shire was a part of Arthedain, and as such a part of Arna. The hobbits obtained official permission from King Argeleb II at Norbury to settle the lands, which were no longer populated and were seen as the king's hunting grounds. The king stipulated 3 conditions to this grant: that the hobbits should acknowledge his lordship, that they should maintain the roads within the Shire, and finally that they should aid his messengers. The hobbits therefore considered themselves subjects of the king, and since the marches to the great battles Arna fought against Angmar, after the fall of Arna, the Shire remained a minor but independent, self-governing realm. The chiefs of the clans elected an official named the Thane to hold the king's powers after the North Kingdom fell. The first Thanes were the heads of the Old Buck clan. The position later came to be held by the Tooks. Its small size, relative lack of importance, and brave and resilient hobbit population made it too modest an objective for conquest. More importantly, the Shire was guarded and protected by the Dundane Rangers, who watched the borders and kept out intruders. The only strangers to enter the Shire were the dwarves travelling on the great road that ran through the Shire to and from the mines in the Blue Mountains, and the occasional elves on the way to the Grey Havens. This peaceful situation changed after Bilbo Baggins's acquisition of the One Ring in the year 1341 of the Shire Reckoning, shortly after the beginning of the events described in The Lord of the Rings. The Shire was first visited by the 9 Ringwraiths and then captured by Saruman through his underling Lotho Sackville Baggins, who turned the Shire into a police state and began a massive campaign to industrialize it, bringing widespread misery and severely damaging its ecology. It was liberated with the help of Frodo, Sam, Merry, and Pippin after the end of the Quest of the Ring through the victory at the Battle of Bywater. After Aragorn's return as the King of Arnor and Gondor, the Shire became a protected enclave inside the reunited kingdom. Aragorn is known to have issued an edict that forbade the entrance of full-sized men into the Shire. The Shire was soon restored with magic soil from Galadriel's Lorien Garden. The year S.R. 1420 was considered by the inhabitants of the Shire to be the most productive and prosperous year in the history. Government: the Shire was a voluntarily orderly society. The only government services were the message service and the watch, the police, whose officers were called sheriffs, and whose chief duties involved rounding up stray livestock. The total number of regular sheriffs was 12, 3 for each farthing. There was also a somewhat larger and fluctuating number of bounders, a kind of unofficial border control. At the beginning of The Lord of the Rings, there were many more bounders than had been required for centuries, and they were unusually busy. One of the few signs obvious to the hobbits of the Shire of the troubled times. To a large extent, individual families and clans handled their own internal affairs. Where a prominent family was associated with a certain district, the head of that family would also exercise a kind of authority over his area. Thus, the Master of the Hall, a Master of Buckland, hereditary head of the Brandybuck clan, was the effective ruler of Buckland. The title Master of the Hall comes from his more immediate authority over Brandy Hall, the greatest of the dwelling places of the Brandybuck family, filling Buck Hill in Bucklebury. The Master also exercises a good deal of authority in the Marish region of the East Forthing just across the Brandywine River from Buckland. Similarly, the head of the Took clan are often just called the Took, ruled the ancestral Took dwelling of Great Smiles, the village of Tuckborough, and the wider area known as the Tookland. There were only two Shire-wide officials, the Thane and the Mayor. The Thanship was a hereditary office, set up after the collapse of the Kingdom of Otherdain, to hold the King's authority over the Shire. In practice, the Thane's duties were limited, mostly related to defence. The Thane was the master of the Shire Moot, and captain of the Shire Muster and the Hobbitry in arms, but his muster and moot were only held in times of emergency, which no longer occurred. The Thanship had ceased to be more than a nominal dignity. Nevertheless, the feeling remained widespread that, in the absence of a king, the Thane was the source for all proper authority in the Shire, and during Saruman's intervention in the Shire in S.R. 1419, Thane Paladin II, aided by many hobbits and particularly his Took clan, led armed opposition to Saruman's forces from his capital at Tuckborough. When Frodo Baggins left the Shire at the outset of The Lord of the Rings S.R. 1418, the office of Thane had existed for 1039 years. The first Thane, Buckler of the Marish, took office in S.R. 379. He and his 11 successors of the Old Buck family held the Thanship for 361 years. When Gorhendad Old Buck led his family to settle Buckland, the office of Thane passed to Isambras I, head of the Took family, which held the Thanship ever since. In S.R. 1418, the Thane was Paladin II, the 31st Thane and the 19th of the Took line. Thanes of the Shire include Buckler of the Marish, 11 Thanes of the Old Buck line, possibly including Gorhendad Old Buck, who removed to Buckland in 740. Isambras I Took is Engram II, Isambras III, Therimbras II, Fortinbras I, Gerontius the Old Took is Engram III, Isambras IV, Fortinbras II, Therimbras III, Paladin II, Peregrine. Faramir, the chief official of the Shire, was the mayor of Michel Delving, elected every 7 years at the Free Fair held on the White Downs in the Westfolding. The mayor was the postmaster and first sheriff of the Shire. The hobbits of the Shire generally obeyed the rules, that is, the ancient laws of the North Kingdom, and there was no real need to enforce them. All hobbits voluntarily obeyed them as they were both ancient and just. Hobbits had lawyers, but these dealt mostly with wills and such matters. There is no record of a formal court system, still less of criminal prosecutions or punishments. Frodo stated that in the Shire no hobbit had ever been known intentionally to kill another hobbit. Smeagol's wicked behavior, including his murder of Deacute-Agol, led Frodo to doubt that Smeagol was a hobbit at all. Of course, it is probable that Smeagol's treachery was the result of the ring's influence. The books make it clear that the ring could tempt individuals to perform terrible acts. At the resumption of the throne by King Elessar, the Shire again became part of the restored Kingdom of Arna. Elessar permitted the hobbits to keep their own laws and customs. In 1427, Elessar issued an edict prohibiting men from entering the Shire and declaring it a free land under the protection of Arna.